The UNESCO World Heritage Committee is meeting in India for the first time, and the 46th session is being chaired here at the Bharat Mandapam in New Delhi. One of the newest members of the committee is Ukraine, who was elected to the committee in November 2023. And I have with us the Deputy Minister for Culture and Information Policy, Anastasia Bondar, who is here representing the country for the World Heritage Committee session. Thank you, Minister, for joining us at the Print. So, my first question to start this conversation is since February 2022, Russia started the war in Ukraine. There have been multiple reports of cultural heritage sites that have been damaged. In fact, Ukraine has 8 World Heritage sites, of which 3 are on the in danger list, which is Kiev, Lviv Historic City Center, and the Historic City Center in Odessa. So I just want to understand, in a sense, what really is the kind of damage that is being seen to Ukrainian cultural sites over the last 2 years.
So first of all, let me start with saying thanks to your country for having the very warm welcome, both by the temperature and also the good wishes which we are receiving in here. Going back to your question, I think that we have to go step by step in understanding on what the destructions on the cultural heritage are and how we treat them from the perspective of the international laws, international organizations, and everything else. So first of all, according to the latest statistics which we get, is 1,085 cultural heritage sites which were either destroyed or damaged, which only tell us about the cultural heritage sites, but not mention the cultural infrastructure, which is another 2,000, because you can understand that cultural infrastructure is about the theaters, cinemas, philharmonics, circus, art schools, and everything else. It's not obligatory that those buildings are the cultural heritage site. At the same time, schools, hospitals, social buildings, and all the others, they can be the cultural buildings. So there is a diversity on the, to be clear on how the statistics is gathered. At the same time, we understand that huge part of the territory is still temporarily occupied. And to give you an example, on the museum, for example, fund of Ukraine, which we counted on the 2014, because this is where we consider that the war has started. It counted on 12 million of museum items. And as of now, we have around 1.7 million of museum items staying at the occupied territories, which does not give us any understanding on the possible status, if not proved to be looted by the Russian Federation and illicit trafficking taken to the Russian territory. So in here, there is a big diversity on the damages, as well as I have to mention the damages due to people's relocation, because those should be considered the damage towards the culture, because the cultural services are not provided. We understand that a lot of people who used to play in the theater and the cinema and teach children music, schools and so on, they were pushed to leave their houses and relocate either within the country or to other countries of the world. So we have so many different directions of this war influence of culture that all of them have to be treated separately. At the same time, it's important to mention, you might have heard that UNESCO is reporting a little bit of different numbers of the site damages. That happens because of the different structures of the international reporting and the local reporting, and for sure the complicated possibilities to enter the pre-frontline territories or any other territories associated with the occupied territories. So we gather this information from the regions on the ground. Sometimes you can imagine that it's not very easy to report back to center, but still people at the places on sites, they are doing it, while the international observers cannot be entering those sites. So there's always a difference in numbers, though we are trying to use all possible technologies, like using the satellites as well. And here a lot of institutions are international institutions, including UNESCO and the Smithsonian University. They're really helping us to monitor the situation on the pre-front line and the occupied territories, to see on how the satellite can monitor. But again, these are, questions which will stay open until our victory, when we can enter the territories back.
Right, and just for the benefit of people viewing, can you, like you said, there are so many different ways of looking at it. One UNESCO study suggested that Ukraine needs close to $600 million a year, every year till 2033, for rebuilding the sites that UNESCO has documented as damaged. So can you give us a sense of the sort of volume of value of what Ukraine is looking at when it comes to rebuilding its cultural infrastructure?
I guess the numbers, unfortunately, will continue to increase as far as we can go and understand what are the real destructions. In this way, how you count the the losses, this also might go not only towards the physical destruction of the building itself, which, as you can imagine, differs greatly from the just ordinary buildings, which are not the cultural heritage, because for those buildings the decision can be made to just destroy it till the end and build a new one, which is completely unacceptable for the cultural heritage sites, which, no matter how much is left in the rests, you still have to not to rebuild, but renew the ancient way it was created, which complicates the type of how you count the exact amounts. Not to mention, for example, the abortion of the operations of the cinemas. This is something what you lose on your income. The stopping of the operations of theaters is about how you stop providing the cultural services for people. Again, the calculation of these losses is something, a matter of how the international community has to agree about that. Not to mention the loss towards the Ukrainian heritage on the identity side, because this is something what communities might be losing at the places of their natural habitat, and those places might not be able to be returned in their initial way. So as of now, I think that the reported numbers were over 10 billion already, and unfortunately they are to grow.
Right. And I just want to pivot here a little bit because, like I'd said in the introduction, Ukraine became a member, got elected to the World Heritage Committee in November 2023. So now it's part of the collective responsibility decision-making body for protecting World Heritage sites. Another territory, the Palestinian territories, has come to this meeting with a demand to put their sites, I think the Tel Umamer, under protection, under the World Heritage List in danger. So how does Ukraine now look at its responsibility towards sites like the one in Palestine over the next 4 years as a part of the committee?
I love this tricky word, collective responsibility. you know, and I really sometimes enjoy watching on people misusing this, very much depending on the situation. Because when you talk about the Russia's full-scale invasion, there is no collective responsibility. There is a very concrete responsibility of one particular aggressor invading the country and ruining all these things. On the other hand, when we talk about the international community and heritage, and when we talk about the world heritage sites, then we understand that all the nations of the world have agreed to accept these sites as the world heritage, the world's history, belonging to all the countries of the world. And since that point, the protection of those sites belongs to all countries in the world. That's why we're trying to do all our best and all the international possible stages to attract the attention that indeed, while there are the hostilities continue, and while the aggression and the missiles continue to come to our country, the heritage sites, they also suffer. And when we start listening and hearing the manipulations that it's not the cultural heritage sites which are being attacked, although they are, we always have to keep attention on how sensitive the ancient buildings are. And when we talk about such UNESCO World Heritage Sites as the city of Odessa, city of Lviv, the Kyiv city center, we understand we talk about the big territory where a lot of sites are located. And then we understand when missile comes and when the air protection system operates, there are still the blast waves and the explosion waves, which are super heavy in influencing on the structure of the old building. So when we take San Sofia Cathedral, which is going back to the 10th century being built, you can imagine that wherever the explosion comes and the hills of the Kyiv city are shaken in its structure, the structure of the building function. So the cracks come, and the cracks are not always shown from, and so in order to understand on what is the influence, you have to do the X-rays, you have to do the understanding, such in-depth analysis on each and every heritage building. And then you have to ask yourself, in Ukraine right now, we have 100,000 heritage buildings or heritage sites. 100,000. For sure, they are not the UNESCO site, all of them, but it doesn't mean that they have no significance for the local population. So the amount of the effort to be taken to control, to monitor, it's huge. And that's why every day on the international organizations meetings, we are trying to attract as much attention as possible towards the enlarging the monitoring system, attracting more international experts to come and to understand on how they can help us, and also to understand on where we can go on the risk mitigation part, because it's at the very end not only the missiles, which is very direct and more or less clear understanding. There are also some not that much visible things, like the explosion of Kakhovka hydropower plant. Like, who would have expected that in the middle of the war, where you are trying to protect your sky, there's going to be explosion at the hydropower plant, which would influence several regions of the country's population, buildings, museums, which would cover the fields with water, which would actually bring the situation of foregoing of our archaeological experts to those territories due to the transmitting of the explosive, how you call it, the TNT, yes, whatever. There was in the underground left by the aggressor. So the influences are in such different fields and directions that every month or two, the priorities are changing.
Yeah, no, so I understand that, but in playing its role, given the experience that you have and this understanding, my larger question is, in other territories, for example, Palestine, which is facing its own conflict, it has sites that are old, 10th century, 11th century, that are under threat. And they're here saying, we need this also protected by the global community. So how does the Ukrainian government see its role as one that is facing its own issues and using that in the UNESCO decision-making bodies? Right? So I want to understand that transition.
I'm seeing that as the new position of Ukraine of attracting special attention to the situations like we have in our country and which occur worldwide, especially where there is a possibility for the cultural heritage sites to suffer. And right now, as of since the Second World War, there was no situation where UNESCO could have had such an experience on the ongoing conflict, trying to preserve heritage inside the ongoing conflict. What was the experience before? The conflict came in, nobody could enter, the conflict ended, and then the experts came and slowly working down with all the destructions and doing the monitoring and so on. Now the situation differs, and we see that such situations tend to occur in the world, unfortunately, more and more, including your example. So I would more go on the side of understanding of where the international laws don't work and how we need to change and adapt the situation in order to use the experience of Ukraine and later it to be reused in other territories, no matter which is the territory, but on how we can protect the heritage site in such situation.
Understood. Which brings me to my next question, and you're here in New Delhi. How has, from the Ukrainian government's point of view, has the Indian government stepped in to help protect its heritage sites? Are there conversations? Are there discussions, negotiations? I want to understand, in that sense, where do Ukraine and India see each other, if they do, on protection of cultural heritage sites in Kiev or Lviv or Odessa?
Well, me personally, I would really appreciate if India becomes our great partner in this thing. I purely see that the history has shown us that we did not know the reality of the history of all the countries. And right now we start changing of how we look at the wordings of what the colonialism is, on what is the relations of the ex-Soviet Union and Ukraine and how close it is to the colonial narratives in, for example, Indians' history. And I would like us to find these close things of possible cooperation, to understand and to find where, we can jointly continue together to work for this heritage. Because I've heard during these several days that India has worked hard to bring back the museum items which were earlier relocated to the other countries, and that India is succeeding in this situation. We have had a dramatic example of one Crimean collection of the Scythian gold to be taken in 2014 out of Crimea to the Netherlands Museum for the exhibition. And while the situation with the annexation of Crimea happened, there was a huge court procession going on for 10 years in order to prove that the collection which left the territory of Ukrainian as the country belonged to the state and had to go back home to the state, which resulted with our victory, and the collection came back last year to Ukraine, and the exhibition is opened right now for everyone. So these are very important things, and very little amount of countries succeed in particular these items. And I think this is where we can, help each other and support each other greatly on the international level to really return everything what belongs to us.
Right, and the reason I ask this as well is earlier this month, our Prime Minister was in Russia for the annual India-Russia summit, and uh, President Zelensky had publicly, raised doubts about this meeting, and so I just want to understand, after that, after President Zelensky's comments, once you're here in New Delhi, how do you view the larger Ukraine-India ties, and do you really see going forward specific cooperation in areas such as culture, or is that still something that's not even on the table?
My opinion is that we have to use each and every opportunity to share the information about the real situation in Ukraine. In case India is open for the same thing from their side and is eager to show and teach us what we can learn from the past and what can be the changes of the narratives about India, we would be very open to learn that. Education is the most powerful weapon. This was said here in India. So I think that we have to use those each and every opportunity to open to the world the real situation, the real history behind Ukraine, the real history behind the war which is ongoing right now, and by this open Ukraine to India in the new way. If we can do that through culture, through the exhibitions, through the theatrical performances, through any type of the art and creative industries, we are ready to do that.
That was my last question. Thank you so much, Minister Bondar, for joining us here.